Okay, everyone. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for registering for today's BIM Toolkit for Manufacturers session. We've got over 60, nearly 70 construction product manufacturers in today's webinar audience, which is great to see. At a glance, I think about 2/3 are customers to our NBS Plus National BIM Object and Product Selector services, which is great to see. And about a third new to NBS and Insight, so welcome. Again, looking at the list of attendees today, I can see we've got a good range of construction products represented across our webinar audience. I'll try and incorporate some relevant examples wherever I can in today's session. Just for your information, we will be recording today's seminar for sending round afterwards. So just before I start, just a bit of information about me and why I'm presenting the BIM Toolkit to you today. My name's Sarah Gray and I'm the Product Manager for the BIM Toolkit since its release in April this year. I've also been a member of the NBS team for over 10 years now, and I've worked with our range of specification resources and their users from all sectors, including architecture, services engineering, structural engineering and landscape from both the public and private sector. So earlier this year, many of you probably attended an introductory BIM Toolkit webinar session from my colleague Ian Chapman, Director of the NBS National BIM Library. In his introduction, Ian covered a lot of the theory and the underlying principles, so how the toolkit came to be, the development process and the team involved, the ideas behind the toolkit, and he also introduced you to some of the unique benefits to product manufacturers of the BIM Toolkit. This webinar was recorded and made available to you on our website. So today I want to follow on from that theory by showing you how the BIM Toolkit is typically being used by the design team on projects. So just a little bit more about today's session. Here's an overview of what I'm going to cover. First, for the benefit of those who haven't been able to watch the presentation I've just mentioned, and also as a bit of a memory jog for those who did attend, I'm going to give a quick recap on some background and highlights from Ian's session. Then I'm going to get into the toolkit and show it in use, looking in a bit more detail at product data templates, which I know a lot of you are keen to learn more about. Then I'm going to touch on some guidance, what you should do next after the session. And lastly, just to mention that throughout the session, if you do wish to post questions, I have colleagues here from customer engagement and software development on hand who can respond to questions throughout the presentation wherever possible. But I will also come back to some questions and answers at the end. When demonstrating the toolkit in use, my aim is to paint a really clear picture of who and how and when the toolkit might be used and the value of the information provided by BIM Toolkit to the various members of the project team. And most importantly, I really want to focus on how you as a construction product manufacturer can get maximum benefit from your product information being available in a range of formats at different stages in a construction project. So let's start with the recap. As I say, this session was developed as a follow-on from an earlier webinar. I don't want to repeat things that Ian covered, but let's spend a minute just reminding ourselves of the concept of BIM Toolkit and how it came to be. So you're probably all familiar with Level 2 BIM package, which consists of lots of guidance frameworks and standards, which was intended to provide the industry with the frameworks and standards they need to achieve Level 2 BIM, with April 2016 deadline for use of Level 2 BIM on centrally procured projects being widely known. But there were two missing pieces of that Level 2 BIM jigsaw, and these were classification and a digital plan of work. And so, thanks to an Innovate UK funded project, this took place, and it saw NBS work with a number of industry representatives to release the BIM Toolkit in April this year. From the clients, which you can see there, to the core team, to the steering team. And I'll just spend a little bit of time recapping on some of the NBS BIM Toolkit benefits that Ian presented last time. I think there's about 5 slides of these, so I'll just do a whistle-stop tour through those just to sort of set our minds in the right frame. So, benefits of the BIM Toolkit as positioned were that it's presenting a unified classification system. It gives task managers the ability to assign and manage tasks. It gives a library of object definitions. and a tool to define what you want. It gives a tool to describe what you will deliver, and also a tool to check that supply meets demand. Now this validation part of the BIM toolkit is still in research prototype phase, private beta status. Of course, if you want more information on that, we'll be happy to give that after the session. The BIM toolkit also is a tool that can generate outline specifications, and a tool that supports open access and open BIM standards. It's a place where your digital information can be found, and a place to win business as a product manufacturer. And of course, not forgetting that the NBS products and services shown on this slide here, RebaProductSelector.com, NBS Plus and NBS National BIM Library, that many of you will be familiar with, all feed into the BIM toolkit. Okay, so that's the recap part of the session. Now, if you bear with me, we'll just get into the product itself. So here we have the BIM toolkit. Because I'm actually demonstrating within the live product, I'll try and make sure that when I'm scrolling through the screen, I'll try and do that at a pace which is giving you the best user experience at your end. As stated in the BIM Task Group July newsletter, the primary objective of the BIM toolkit was for construction professionals to be able to define what data should be delivered, by whom and by when. And you can see that general principle captured here on the home page. The BIM Task Group also described it in that newsletter as a keystone to enabling the practical implementation of UK Level 2 BIM. It's completely free to use, and it can be used for project work or simply to browse the vast library of definitions and classifications that I'm going to show you later. But before we have a look at these two areas, just some highlights. So since its first release in April, at the BIM Show Live, the BIM Toolkit was winner of the Best BIM Innovation Award. It's had over 19,000 visitors from 141 countries since it went live in April. It's had over 3,000 projects created. And on the 30th of September, which is in a couple of weeks' time, the product will move out of the beta phase, which you can see expressed here currently still on the screen, marking its true sort of ready for use status within the industry. If we think about the different audiences that the toolkit can benefit, again, these are expressed on the home page of the BIM toolkit. So the toolkit benefits clients and asset managers, design and construction teams and construction manufacturers in lots of different ways. For the client, it's about getting the information they need to manage the asset and derive improvements in cost, value, carbon performance. The client really wants digital data to enable them to manage the asset and get best value in the long term. The early adopter clients that we'll see in the BIM toolkit will be the likes of Environment Agency, Highways Agency, Ministry of Defence, all of whom have got build assets that they need to maintain, develop and manage. Across all the new build and refurbishment projects that these and other government departments will be running, they'll be running these projects in accordance with Level 2 BIM, of which the minimum requirements are captured in the BIM toolkit. However, whether public or private sector, clients need to think about their information requirements far more than they do at present and define this up front, and the toolkit really helps to do that. For the design and construction team, the supply chain need to understand the client's information demands, and the design teams need to establish the correct roles and responsibilities. They need to be allocated tasks and deliver the data that is required. And for product manufacturers such as yourself, the focus is on being able to provide digital information quickly and easily to specifiers on the thousands of construction projects that we'll see going through the toolkit in the months and years to come. So that's the range of audience that can derive benefits from the toolkit, but how does that work in practice? So we've already seen the key purpose of the toolkit, i.e. to help define the who, the what and the when in relation to the information required and delivered on a construction project. But in order to define information delivery, i.e. the what, at the various stages of a construction project, a reference library of definitions was required. These levels of definition may either be described in terms of geometry, level of detail, or information requirements, which level of information. So let's take a look at these. Okay, so here we have the definitions library. So the BIM Toolkit features this UK reference library of over 5,700 freely available objects. This definitions library covers all construction disciplines, as the examples here indicate: architecture, civils, landscape, services, structural. And what we'll first do is we'll look at some of the example definitions that are provided, and by doing that we can familiarise ourselves with the LOD and LOI terms that I've mentioned there, and we can also start to see examples of manufacturer information being made available to those design team members who have responsibility for providing information to the levels that we're going to see. Actually, it would be interesting to know how many of you as construction product manufacturers have actually had requests for LOD and LOI to specific levels. So maybe this is something you can send a quick chat note through for my colleagues here to review and summarise as part of the post-webinar follow-up. For those people using the toolkit who require a bit more guidance on level of definition, i.e. the level of detail and level of information, there's some great useful expert articles here on the right-hand side of the screen for your convenience. So if we start looking at these levels of definition in more detail, I'm going to use a ceiling example. I could have quite as easily used one of the many examples within here. And if we look at the ceilings in more detail, and if I just scroll down the screen a little bit there, so what we can see here is we have two tabs, and I'll start here with first the level of detail tab. So what we can see here is information, i.e. level of detail, structured in accordance with the numerical stages of a project, so the 2 and 3 and 4, which you can see here on the left-hand side of the screen. And these are the stages as defined by the Construction Industry Council. Some of you may be more familiar with the previous alphabetical plan of work project stages, which we've run through A through to F. And what we're seeing is that generally at stage 2, you would require level of detail 2. So as you can see, this level of detail guidance can be defined for each deliverable. And if I just scroll slowly down the page here, what we can see here is that in these example definitions, as I scroll a bit further down, we can see that we're placing content at relevant locations to make the user's life easier, and really to put the end user in touch with the information digitally and at relevant points in the project. So at stage 2, early in the project, this LOD may be at a lesser level of detail. So here you'll see some generic National BIM library objects being made available. Obviously, for users coming to the BIM toolkit or coming to the level of definitions and looking through this library of resources who aren't familiar with the National BIM library, there's lots of sort of lovely little tweaks, tips on the screen, such as little hoverovers, which give them a bit more information about what the National BIM library is about. Also, what I'll show you here is that the objects that were presented can be scrolled through just for ease of reference. So as we progress further down, as the project progresses to perhaps technical design stage, so perhaps stage 4 or stage 5, what we'll see here is that the level of detail evolves and there's more geometric detail being required. And so here, what you'll see is you'll see more proprietary BIM objects for the designers to choose from. If we just look at some of these examples, in this scenario, again, there's a National BIM Library hoverover. We can scroll from left to right to see the different National BIM Library objects available, which will serve my information requirement at this stage. We can also filter them by manufacturer if that better suited our preference. And what we can see here is that once we're presented with that information, we're only 2 clicks away from the designer actually obtaining the object in Revit format for immediate use in their model. So it's giving them real convenience of access, coupled with assurances of data quality, currency and relevance. Okay, so let's get back to the toolkit. So I've talked you through a level of detail information there, and I'm just going to show you exactly the same principles for level of information. So again, I'll just scroll slowly back to the top of the page so we're not jumping all over the place. Great. Okay, so in terms of level of information, what you'll see immediately there is reference to a manufacturer product data template. They are referenced here, and I will come back to those slightly later in the presentation. So following exactly the same principles as I talked through for the level of detail information, at early project stages where a lesser level of information is required and it's more about expressing design intent, what you can see here is that we're providing information in a relevant format, i.e. expressing design intent is probably really best served by catalogues. So here again, we've got some nice hoverovers there for people who perhaps aren't familiar with the product selector resource. We've got the ability to scroll through the catalogues available or filter them by manufacturer. So again here, we could choose a manufacturer. And again, sorry, I am just selecting these fairly at random just to demonstrate the functionality or the benefits that's available to the end user. Again, we're 1 click away from the user actually accessing those catalogues. Okay, so we've shown level of information at a lesser level of detail, but again, as the project progresses to technical design stage and the design evolves, there is more information provided. So again, if we just look at this in relation perhaps to level of information 4, so the design's evolved, information requirements have increased, and the BIM Toolkit supports the designer in their search for information to meet a level of information 4 request. Here you'll see the information presented in a slightly different, more granular way again, providing sort of real ease of access to those using it. And if we just look at ceiling supports as an example in this instance, we can see here that actually we've got more options to filter the information available to us. So again, we can scroll through the relevant information, this time presented in NBS Plus product specification format, again, to suit the level of information being requested at this stage. So here we can filter as we wish, and then we can even filter again by product manufacturer. And again, we're just 1 click away from that information. And if we scroll down the page, again, the user is provided with the ability to copy that specification simply through a 2-click process. Okay, so let's go back to the toolkit. So I've showed you some principles there that relate to ceilings. Sorry, I will do this slowly to get us back to the top. If we go back to our definitions, I could have quite easily shown that for heating within the services area, rail tracks within the civils area, fencing within the landscape area, or roof structures in the structure area. Obviously, we have a little bit of a time restriction today, but if that's information that you wanted to go and have a look through, please do feel free to browse as you wish after the session. So what I've shown here is one route into the 5,700 plus objects using the example definitions, but of course, designers, clients, manufacturers can search the library using the search definitions option. So I'm going to do some simple searches here. For example, let's look for some low voltage systems. Oops. So what you can see here is it's providing me with definitions associated with low voltage distribution systems. I'm not sure if you noticed there, but actually in the definition search bar, I actually typed LV systems. And what's happened is it's presenting me with relevant information. So what's going on in the background there is that we've added a library of synonyms, which means that if I type in LV system, as I just did in this example, the BIM toolkit returns results for low voltage systems because we've identified this as an acronym that's commonly used in the synonyms library. A more general example of this behind the scenes wizardry in action is if I search for burglar alarms. So what you can see is that that's actually presented me with a list of definitions relating to intruder alarms. That's because the UniClass 2015 classification actually details it as intruder alarms, but we don't expect users to be classification experts, and as a user or somebody searching for this information, you don't need to worry about that. The synonyms recognise that it's more likely that the user would search for burglar alarm in this instance. So you're probably all quite keen, if you haven't already done so, to do your own searches in BIM Toolkit and search the different definitions and see where your products do or could appear. Again, if this is something that you want to do or discuss in more detail, your account managers would be happy to help you. And I'll give you some contact details at the end of the webinar. If you as product manufacturers have any ideas for additional synonyms, please use the feedback mechanisms in place on the site, which I'm sort of hovering over here at the bottom of the screen. So there's lots of detail covered here about how the BIM Toolkit presents information to help users satisfy the specific geometric and information requirements that are requested of them, and the opportunities this subsequently offers to manufacturers. So again, just remind you, if you've got any questions so far, please send them in and my colleagues will try and respond as I continue on with the session. Okay, so now I'd like to show you BIM Toolkit as it would be used on a project. So I'm going to the project area and it's prompting me to sign in here. The example I'm going to use is a school refurbishment project, and I'm going to focus on some specific information responsibilities that relate to the architect in this case. However, this could just as easily be a services engineer, landscape architect, manufacturer's a specialist contractor, or any other member of the design team. Recognising the time that I've got for this webinar, I'm going to focus on specific aspects of the process most pertinent to you. So if I just log in here, if you can just bear with me. So what you'll notice that at this stage, it's prompting me to log in, whereas when I was searching the definitions library before, that was all free to access, no registration required. And the aim behind that is to make that information as readily and openly available as possible. Okay, great. So, here, what I'm going to do is, as I said, I'm going to use an existing project. However, if I wanted to create a new project, just to show you the options available to assist BIM Toolkit users when they're setting up a project, it prompts me to add certain information about my project at this stage. And really all I want to show you here is the templates that are available to BIM Toolkit users at the point of setting up a template. And really this is just to make it as easy as possible to get started. So there's some standard predefined templates there, or they can choose to use an existing project template. The benefit of this is that it'll carry across existing tasks, deliverables and project details. Okay, so I'm going to end that creating a project there, because as I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an existing project which I've already set up to show you more of the toolkit in use on a project. Before we do that, I'll just familiarise you with some of the components of the project within the BIM Toolkit. So projects consist of stages. As I've already explained, these are as defined by the Construction Industry Council stages and represented within the BIM Toolkit. They consist of stages, tasks, deliverables, participants, and roles. So I haven't clicked on any of those, but just to sort of go through the different concepts behind BIM Toolkit. So as I mentioned earlier, the stages here are what are familiar with the CIC, and the BIM Toolkit can be used at any stage of a project. No matter what your procurement, the BIM Toolkit gives a framework that can be adjusted to suit your particular needs. At each stage, the BIM Toolkit gives some handy reminders to the project team about the other resources that are available to them. So I'm just going to whiz you over to the right-hand side of the screen here, and what you'll see is some useful references to the NBS BIM object standard at this stage. At the later stages, what you'll see is references to related NBS services, including NBS Plus, RBAProductSelector.com, and the NBS National BIM Library. And ultimately, what all this is doing is just adding to the exposure of the manufactured product resources within the BIM Toolkit environment. So on this particular project, myself as the project lead have set up some details of the project for this stage. So forgive me, I'm not from construction, so some of those values look a little bit odd. Please forgive me for that. But I've set up some details there of the project. What I've also done is I've also set up contributors and roles associated. I've added in organisations that will be involved with the respective roles involved on my project. And as I say, I've associated organisations with these, from the architect to the services engineer. Depending on the project in question, this information may be known from an early stage, or it may follow at a later stage. What you can also see is that as a project lead, I've started to set up some tasks which have been assigned to named organisations on this project. And if we just look at one of those tasks in a little bit more detail, what you'll see is that within the BIM Toolkit, whether it's a task or a deliverable, it's always framed by the plain language questions which capture the client's requirements for information. Everything we do relates back to these. So what we can do is at an appropriate time, obviously once we've set tasks up, participants can be invited to the project by the project lead, i.e. myself in this case, which means that they can view these tasks that we're seeing here that they're responsible for. I think I've got an example. So when you invite a participant to become a member of the project, they'll see an email which looks something like this. So if you bear with me 2 seconds. And I'll just, oh, sorry. The email looks a little bit like this. So really simple, but by clicking on that, they'll be invited to the project. And then what they'll be able to see is through some great filtering options within the BIM Toolkit, either here or by searching here, they can quickly get to the tasks which they are responsible for. As a contributor, if they've got comments that they want to add against these tasks, they can send those to the project lead and those can be added in this way by the project lead as and when required. Or alternatively, during team project sessions, the toolkit can be open on screen with everyone inputting and adding comments as part of a collaborative team session. So let's continue our walkthrough of this school project. And let's see how the client may use the toolkit to describe their information needs. If we remember that the client is interested in pretty much anything which has a cost, a risk, a time, or a quality consideration. So in this particular instance, the client in this instance, due to a previous negative experience of escalating costs of a fencing system on another school refurbishment in the area, and the fact that the school in question here has a particularly sizable perimeter, the client in this instance has detailed that they would like as much detail of the fencing system as possible. So what we'll do is we'll just go to a later stage in the project and we'll add this fencing system information requirement as a deliverable. So again, what you can see here is I've put in fencing and I've got lots of options there. I know in this instance that the fencing is assigned as an assigned responsibility to the architect. And I know that in this instance, I want a particular type of fencing system. So I can select this from deliverable from within this area. Apologies, just bear with me. Oops, sorry, I know what's happening, sorry. It's because I'm down off the bottom of my screen. Bear with me. There it is. Okay. Sorry, I've actually hidden a part of my own screen there. Okay, so going on to the next step. So I'm going to detail that actually it's the architect in this case who's responsible for that deliverable. And as I said, I'm really keen to capture as much detail up front early on as I can. So I'm going to set slightly higher than normal LOD and LOI requirements for this particular deliverable in this instance. So as the client and the project lead working on adding this deliverable at this stage, on screen here I can really quickly and easily see what level of detail 4 represents. And similarly, what level of information 5 represents. So I can really be clear that actually that is the information that I require at this stage. And what we'll do is we'll add that deliverable. So what that means is that that deliverable is now being assigned as the responsibility of that architect in this instance Akai Architects. I know that I've already invited Akai Architects to be a participant or a member of this project team, so they can now see this and have visibility of this deliverable assigned to them within this project. If they want to then come to this deliverable as a contributor to sort of understand what their information requirements are, i.e. what they're required to provide, again, there's lots of ways that they can look at this information. And as you can see here, even at this level, we're presenting BIM objects from the National BIM Library. But perhaps actually I want to view a slightly more full definition. So at this stage, we wanted level of detail 4, if I remember. And as you can see here, we've got lots of examples of BIM objects from the National BIM Library. So pretty much just as I showed you before, what this means is that the architect responsible for providing this information understands what is required and also has objects readily available for them to select and include to satisfy the information requirement that is their responsibility. So really, there's a great opportunity here for you as a manufacturer to make the architect's life as easy as possible by simply making the information they need available to them in this format. And as I say, they can follow the suggested objects here, or they can look at other ways of satisfying this information requirement. And similarly, so I've focused on LOD there. Similarly, for the level of information requirements, which I believe the client specified was to level of information 5 in this instance. Again, just as what we saw before, by this information being readily available to the architect in this case, at this point in time, it's making their lives really easy and providing them with the relevant information to satisfy that information requirement. And so it continues with later stages in the project focusing on the information needed to build the project, to facilitate information exchange between suppliers. And all this information obviously comes back to the employer or the client at the end of the project. So we've had a look at the definitions, we've searched that library, we've seen how product information is showcased in a range of different ways, even at that early search phase. We've shown the BIM toolkit as in use on an example project, satisfying a specific client requirement around a fencing example, and how the architect would then use the BIM toolkit and the manufacturer objects that have been presented, the manufacturer product information that's been presented to satisfy that information requirement. What we're now going to look at, some product data templates. So if we remember earlier, these were featured as part of the level of information tab. So again, back to making the designer's life as easy as possible and why you would use manufacturers' product data templates. We've shown the NBS products and services that provide routes to providing structured product data to suit the information requirements at various stages, i.e. National BIM Library, Product Selector, NBS Plus. But if for whatever reason these routes aren't something that you can or wish to take advantage of, there's huge advantages to be gained from using the product data templates that come free as part of the BIM toolkit. These enable you to respond to users more quickly. And when I open up this data template, what you'll see is that we provide some great general guidance about our products and services, as well as some tips to helping you fill in this product data template. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use one which I've filled in earlier so that you can see examples of the information you would typically include in this data template. Sorry, and I've just switched right over it. There it is. Okay, so here's a manufacturer product data template which I've taken from the BIM toolkit and I've populated so that it is effectively a product data sheet for my company, Gray's Fencing. If I just run you through what the product data template structure is, we've got an introduction section here, again describing the purpose of the product data template, along with some descriptions and further support available from NBS, and the products and services available. When populating this, you would then populate the manufacturer overview page, which you can see I've done here. And then we're taken to a page where you can enter some product information for your range of products in a standard format. So really what this product data template is giving you is giving you the benefits of a framework and a standard structure that will align your product data with the UK Level 2 BIM requirements, which you can see captured in terms of these properties along the top of this product data template. So if you as a manufacturer can do a product data template for your product range, you're making the designer's life as easy as possible within the context of Level 2 BIM. It's a great opportunity for you as a manufacturer to say to your clients, if you're using the toolkit or if you're not, here's all my products in a standardized BIM Level 2 compliant format. You can create product data sheets once for your products, give these to your customers so that you're safe in the knowledge that your customers have the information they need to whatever level they may require at whatever stage in the project. So for example, if there is a requirement for me to provide particular information on my fencing to a particular level of detail or level of information, then I could simply extract one of these columns and provide that to the designer requesting that information. And as I say, I've pre-populated some information here just so you can see the types of information that you would be adding. Again, if this is something which you needed more guidance on or advice, please let us know. Okay, so obviously we've got product data templates. Better still, you could create National BIM Library objects which handle both the level of detail and the level of information. And that National BIM Library object information is back-to-back with BIM Toolkit, so the architect gets all the LOD and LOI plus some COBie Stage 6 information. As a manufacturer, in creating these National BIM Library objects, you're recognising that an architect needs to draw these things and needs to be able to 3D model them and providing them with the detail they need to do so. So that brings us to the end of our toolkit demonstration. I hope you find the product run through helpful and useful, and I hope it satisfies the requirements that you had when you attended and registered for the session. The toolkit really is a tool for everyone, so please give it a try. We'd love to hear your feedback. Within the toolkit area itself, there's some FAQs for manufacturers which are accessible from within the support areas of the toolkit. And there's some manufacturer-specific frequently asked questions already available on the site. So what to do next? Well, register with the toolkit, have a look at the level of detail and level of information for your products. Download the product data templates, have a look, see if you could populate them. Organise your product data so that it aligns with the properties used in the BIM toolkit. For those in the audience who are already NBS manufacturers, you're already off to a fairly good start. Find out where your products appear within the toolkit and how you can improve this. Talk to one of our team, whether you're an existing customer or not, to see how we can help. And most importantly, send us your feedback. It's really important to help ensure that the BIM Toolkit continues to serve the needs of building project manufacturers as well as the clients and the design teams. So if you want feedback on anything in the toolkit, you can use the feedback bar on the bottom of the website, which I showed you earlier. So thanks again for being part of today's session. I hope you found it useful and hope to speak with you all again soon. Before I leave, I'll just cover some questions that my engagement and development teams are going to share with me. Okay, bear with me 2 seconds. Okay, so we've had some questions about how we use the product data templates. Hopefully I showed the process in a little bit of detail there, but you can use the product data templates to create product data sheets that describe your products using a common language that aligns to the NBS BIM Toolkit. And by organising your product information using these templates, you'll be able to provide your customers and your clients with product data that's in a format that matches the UK government's level 2 BIM requirements. And you can host those yourself and make them readily available to your clients. We've had some questions about products that don't have a template. Yeah, great question. Our technical team are working hard to fill any gaps in our template libraries required. If you've got a product that falls outside the scope of the existing templates, please contact us using the contact routes that I've showed here so that we can consider how we can create a suitable product data template. We've had some general questions about BIM, so where can I find out more about the requirements of BIM Level 2? There's some great information on nbs.com/BIM, which I've got a link to on this slide here, so you can see the URL. There's also some great information on the BIM Task Group website, which I have also detailed on this last slide here. Got some questions. How does BIM apply across Europe? Yeah, great. So BIM can be used anywhere in the world, including Europe, but it's the UK government that's mandated the use of level 2 BIM for the UK by 2016, and other countries have got their own local BIM implementation plans. Just looking for some more. This will be my last one. So somebody's asked, will all future projects have to be created using the BIM toolkit? The choice is up to you. The BIM toolkit can be made on a project by project basis, just as with any of the BIM protocols. The NBS BIM Toolkit does form part of the UK government's level 2 BIM suite, and so it will be used on government projects to define the employer's information requirements. And as I say, we really do expect the early adopters to be those government departments that I referenced earlier. So that brings us to the end of the session. I'm sorry if I didn't get a chance to cover your question. We will be sending around full information afterwards of all of the questions with the responses, and we'll also be providing you with a link to the recording of this session should you wish to share it with colleagues afterwards. On behalf of me and my colleagues here at NBS, thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.